Hello everyone, my name's Lost and welcome back to episode 2 of the term-based project that we're making. So in this episode I kind of promised that I would show you how to do some sort of like resolution control. So I think we can start with that, and then we will make the move squares as we talked about in the previous episode, which I will go into further detail about in a moment, but let's do this first. So to control the resolution size for a game like this, I've come to the conclusion that I think this is probably the best way to do it. I could be wrong. You know, I'm sure that there's a variety of ways you can control the resolution size, but for this project, I think this is a good idea. So create this object, and we need a create event with some code in it, right? And in here, we're going to store the window size variables. Oh god, I can't spell today. But that's what we want, and we also need a global, and we're going to call this global window scale. And for right now, this will equal 1. This will make sense in a moment. I mean, and again, there's many different ways you can actually do this code. And lay it out, but I'm just going to do it like this because I've already pre-done this and it kind of works quite well. So display width, and I mean this is quite self-explanatory what this one does, right? This is the variable and this is what it does. It's just going to get the width of your monitor, and we also need display height, and this does the exact same thing, but obviously the height of your resolution or monitor or whatever. And now we need we need the window width and the window height, and this is height, sorry, not height. And this is going to be obviously the game's width and height. God, I can't speak today. Height that we set momentarily. So yeah, we'll just do this really quick, and then we need window height. And I realise I've messed the code up here to make this width. And again, I will probably make a few errors here and there just because I'm constantly glancing over at my previous project, which is done. Like, I mean, it's not finished, but things like this is done. You know, like the resolution control's already in there. So I'm using that as you can see here, I'm just using it as a base so that we can do this. And I've chosen to do it in this format rather than copy and pasting it all in here, just so I can go, as I'm writing the code, I can explain it a little bit better. And I think this code that I'm going to show you is going to be perfect for options menu. So this will be transferable to like other projects that you may do in the future. And I think it's well worth knowing. So what we want to do to start with is we want to find a way to increase the window, right? So the way that you would go about this is we're going to use just the plus and minus key for this, but you can easily adapt this to clicking a button. So let's just crack into it. So if keyboard check pressed, we'll say virtual keyboard add. It should also work on your numpad, I believe, as well. And the display width is bigger than 640 because that's what size the game is, and obviously we don't want the game to be able to go bigger than our monitor screens, right? And we'll times that. So if the display width, so your computer monitor, if it's bigger than 640 times the global window scale, then it will do everything in here. And this code here will prevent it from being bigger than your monitor, is what I was trying to say. So every time you press the add button, we'll add 1 to the global window scale. And we'll add half a point to that if you like. And so what we'll then do is we'll say window set size, and we'll say 640 times the global window scale for the width, and we'll say 360 times the global window scale. And I believe what this will do for us is every resolution that we have will be a 16:9 ratio, right? Because I believe that's the most common, and I don't really know anybody that doesn't use a 16:9 ratio anymore. So that's just what we're going with. So now we'll actually set the position. So we say, and what I mean by set the position is this will set the position in the center of the screen, so it's not, you know, going all over the place. So we'll say if display width is less or equal than 640 times the global window scale. Oh god. Global window scale. Then window set position, and we'll just say 0, 0. Now we need to say, so this basically is saying that if it's the size of your monitor, right, or thereabouts, it'll set the window position up here at your top left, so that it is the full screen, right? I mean, bear in mind this will only work. This won't work for full screen mode. This will only work for either windowed mode or borderless windowed mode. Okay. So now we'll say else if the display width is bigger than 640. So if your monitor is bigger, the width of your monitor is bigger than 640, then we will add that to the global window scale. No, sorry, I don't mean we'll add it to the global window scale, you know what I mean. If your display width is bigger than 640 times the global window scale, so for example, if this starts at 1, the global window scale, I do believe, right? Yep, starts at 1. So we're saying that if display width 640 times 1, you know, then it's just 640, so your monitor will be wider than that. And then every time you press it, it'll add 0.5, okay? So imagine the window scale is now 2. So if your monitor is bigger than 640 times 2, so what's that, 2080? Sorry, 1280. Then we'll set the position to the center, right? And for that we need to do an alarm, because this doesn't update instantly. For some reason, it takes a couple of frames, or a frame rather. So that's what we'll do now. So we'll say if set position is false, which it starts as false, then we'll say alarm 0 equals 1. We'll create that in a second, and we'll say set position equals true. Right, and now we need to basically do this, but for subtraction, so to make the window smaller again. So we'll say else if keyboard check pressed. We'll go vk subtract, and obviously, and the global window scale is bigger or equal to 1, because we don't want it to go any smaller than that, because that would be a little bit ridiculous. And then we'll say global.window scale minus equals 0.5. We'll say window set size. I mean, this is pretty much exactly like the other code, but just kind of opposite, if you know what I mean. Global window scale 360 times the global window scale. Okay, good. And then we'll say if display width is 640 or less times the global window scale, then again window set position 0, 0. You probably don't actually need this particular section here, but I'm going to add it anyway just for consistency's sake. and then we'll say else if display width is bigger than 640. Oops, it's bigger than 640 times the global window scale. And then again, it's exactly the same. If set position is false, then alarm 0 equals 1 and set position equals true. So this is basically the code to scale your game, to change the resolution. And also, after it's changed the resolution, as I said, it will if the game size is smaller than your monitor, it will set it to be in the center, and if not, then it will set it to be at the top left, so that is the full screen. So let's just add the alarm quickly, and then we can move on with the next step. So let's go for alarm 0, and in here, this is just going to refresh the window position. So window height will be window get width divide 2, so it will be at the center of your monitor, obviously, and we're going to do the same. Oh, I keep putting height first, I mean width. And we'll do the same for height. So window get height divide 2, and then we'll say window set position display width divide 2 minus the window width, and then the display height divide 2 minus the window height. And then we'll say set position is false, so that we can then do it again. And that is the resolution size, so let's just check that this works. Please work. It should do. So let's have a look. And of course it doesn't, because once again I forgot to put the object in the room. Being the complete genius that I am. That will never get old, because that's gonna happen a lot. I'm just saying that will happen every time. Right, so let's see if that works. And it does, as you can see. It will never go bigger than the screen, as you can see. These black bars are here because we're in window mode. If we go to borderless, that won't be an issue. But yes, we can now change the resolution in increments of I'm actually not sure, half of 640, right? So 320. So in increments of like 320 pixels, I believe we can change this, width-wise anyway. So yeah, that works quite nicely. And now we'll move on to actually creating move squares for our character to move on. So if we now close this and go into our object Spearman, we are going to add a create event. And in here, we are going to say, I guess these will just be the variables for this. And what we're going to do is, our movement system is going to be based on pixel distance, right? And you can also turn this into like a point system, right? So we'll say our first character, the Spearman. I mean, we may have to change this, I don't know, but for right now we'll say the Spearman has a pixel distance of 100, and in fact I'm going to rename that to pixel dist. So yeah, he can move 100 points. Now this is pretty irrelevant at the moment. This doesn't mean anything yet, because I don't actually know. I think that's going to be about 3 squares roughly he can move. But we will check this in a moment. And we're also going to want orig pixel dist, which stands for original pixel distance, which will equal this pixel dist, just so that we can, just so that we'll be able to reset at the end of the turn our pixel distance, so his movement points. The pixel distance is basically the movement points, right? So at the end of the turn, we can then use this code. You know, but obviously the other way around to then reset our movement points. That might sound a little bit confusing. Hopefully I've made that understandable. Probably haven't. If I haven't, just let me know and I'll go over it. But now we're going to need to create a script for this to work. In fact, first, we do need to create a script, but first we should create a move square, right? So let's just go SPR move square, I guess. And we'll make it 32 by 32. And I'm going to make mine white, but like, I guess transparent, so we can see through it. Maybe 50 in here would be okay. And white, is that white? The butterfly, whatever. That'll do for mine, I think. And we'll see how that looks. So go ahead and center that. And now we will create the objects. Also, I should make you aware that this move system is going to be object based, not necessarily the most efficient, but that's just how we're going to go about doing this. So yeah, that will do. Object move square. Now we need to create a variable in here, and this will make more sense in a moment. But in here, I'm just, because there's only going to be one variable in here, so I'll just put we're going to use a loop to determine how far we can move as well. So we'll just put loop vars for now, and we will come back and edit this to be more relevant in the future. And all we need in here is row, and the row will equal, let me just check because I've forgotten, 128. So the row will equal 128, and this is basically just going to be the Y position, but that'll make sense in a moment. And also the loop vars, whatever we're using here, will always be used to check the entire grid. Okay? So we now need to create a script, and we'll call this script place move squares, I guess. That'll do, whatever. We know what that means. So let's see. For this, we're going to use a for loop. Now, we covered these in a topic previously, in a basic beginner topics, I believe I called the series. So hopefully if you've watched that, you might be a little bit aware of how this works. But if not, just follow along and hopefully you'll understand in a moment. So we're going to say for I equals 0, and while I is lower than 18, I plus equals 1. Okay? Now I don't want to go too in depth because, like I said, I made just a series about this, and oops, that's the wrong one. I made a series about this, but we're saying I starts at 0, and while I is lower than 18, I will add 1. So we now need a variable called ix, and this is going to be the x position of the grid that we check to see if we can place a move node. Okay? And again, this probably isn't the most efficient way of doing this because we're always checking the entire grid. But I don't know, I think this I just like the way this works, and plus I like the idea of adapting an actual loop in here just to demonstrate how they work. So this is what we'll use. I mean, it works just fine, everything works, there's nothing wrong with it. I think it could just be done slightly more efficiently, but whatever. So we're saying if ix is bigger or equal to 576, that is the very last grid. If you think about our grid, that's the very last row, if you like, the very last row. So then it needs to move down a row. Okay, so we're going to say if it's 576, then I is going to equal 0, and the row will plus equal 32. So the row, the Y position, will move down to the next column, or down to the next row, however you want to phrase that, whatever. So it'll move down 1, and then it'll check the next set, right? So then what we're going to do is, underneath this, we need to say if mp grid path. So if we can path to a certain point, again, let's fill out the ID, which we know is map grid, and we know the path is global navigate. So we have to add a few variables here. I've just realised, to our player, to our spearman, but we'll come to that in a moment. So we're going to say if, in fact I'll do that now just so you'll understand this next bit. in the Spearman, yes, sorry, in the Spearman we need cur node x, and that will just be his x for right now, and we'll say cur node y. So this is just his point on the map. It will always be stored in this value. So now we're going to say, so if we can path from the global selected current node x and the global selected current node y to ix and to the row, and obviously we're allowing diagonals, then we will say if path get length global navigate, so this will calculate the length of the path that we have to travel. So if it is smaller or equal to the global dot selected pixel pixel dist, then I'm sure you can see what's going to happen here. We're going to create at that position an object move square. Okay. Wrong number of arguments somewhere. Where? Why? Because I haven't done that. Right. So it will do that, and then we'll say if row is bigger than 320. So this is the bottom row now. Then we're going to say row equals 0 and I equals 20, just to stop the loop completely. Okay, hopefully that made sense. We'll check if it works really quick by adding it to our player turn script. So what we need to say now is when we move, obviously this has to be correct, but we also have to have if mouse, in fact, I'm going to do this up here. So we'll say and instance position mouse x and mouse y is over the object move square. So this basically means we can only ever move if the mouse is over a move square. So we can only move to the move squares, right? Now let's just see if this works. It should, in theory, work. Oh, no it shouldn't, because I haven't called it anywhere, have I? So, after we've... I'm pointing at the screen again like you can see what I'm doing. After we've said the global selected is the player, this is when we will run that script. Okay, so we'll say script open nodes. No we won't, because that's in my other... that's in my other project. What we'll actually say is place move squares like that. Okay, so now let's check that that is working. This should be fine in theory. So let me make it a little bit bigger. No, what's wrong? Variable control ix. That should have an underscore in the middle of that. So let's do that real quick. So place open nodes. Yep, that should have an underscore. Now let's see if it works. No, it doesn't. Okay, why doesn't that work? I will be back in one moment. Right, so it actually did work. All you have to do, like stupidly I forgot once again, is if you go into the move square and actually link the sprite to it, you know, the sprite move square, then it will work. And what I did actually is I just made this a little bit darker. So I did white again, but I increased the opacity to 80 and then filled it. Make sure you click replace when you do that. Now let's have a look how this works. So as you can see, the move squares are placed. We cannot. I'm right clicking outside of it. We cannot move outside. We cannot move anywhere. But if we click there, then we can. Now obviously, we now need that to disappear. Right? This has got to go now. So, what we do with that is in the play turn, we say down here, once we have right clicked, we can then say with object move square instance destroy, and that should do it. Yep, and as you can see, it's still making it here because we're not updating the current node X and Y. Okay, so we should do that. And the way that I did it in my previous project, if you like, is I used this code here. So we'll say if global.moving is true. Now we haven't set this variable up yet, but we will in a moment. So if it's true, if we're moving, then with global selected, and then we'll say if path index equals -1, so that means just if the path's done, if there is no path anymore, then current node X will equal X, and the current node Y will equal Y. And then we'll obviously say global.moving is false, and we will stop there. So what we need to do now is we need to go in control. If you remember the global variables, in here we need to say global.moving equals false, and in our navigation scripts, or actually I guess you can put it in here. Yeah, alright, we'll do it here. In here we will say down, yes, this is fine. We'll say global.moving is false. If I can spell. Now let's just check that out. So we now should have a system that works quite nicely. Let's just check it. So we're moving there. Yeah. No, actually. Why? Why? Okay, give me one moment. So that's why my brain just isn't working today. This should actually say true. Obviously, I don't know how I just made that mistake, but whatever. This should now work. Let's just test it one more time. My brain is farting all over the place today. I don't know if you can tell. So yeah, now it's working. Obviously, you'll notice now that the path has got slightly smaller because we're only moving part of the distance, right? Maybe not. Oh no, it's not, because we're not taking off the movement points, are we? Right, let's make sure that's happening. So we will say that when we move, we need to take off the pixel distance, right? So how far we've travelled. So let's just do that now. So I've just copied and pasted that in there. Just feel free to copy that, and that should do the trick. So let's try that out. In theory, this should now work, right? Yeah, so now we can't do it anymore. So let me just try that again. Right, so if we move one space, then yeah, as you can see, it's now getting smaller, and it is now working just fine. So now, before we end, I will add like a really quick just finish 10 button, just so that we can you know, have our movement points back. So if we go to object control, and I guess that we can just say, I've already done it actually. I've already done this. So you can just feel free to copy and paste that in there, and that should do the trick quite nicely. I think we can end that there for today. You know, we've got a proper movement system working now. What I will do is, I'm not sure what I'm going to do for the next episode yet, but I'll have a think. If you guys want to see anything in particular, then comment below. But yeah, I'll have a think what leads on nicely to this. I think probably what we need to do is get a situation where we have multiple characters on the screen, and then build the movement system with objects in mind that we have to maneuver around and stuff like that. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, guys, and I will see you next time.